All right, I think finally we are ready. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being patient with us. This is our first event for Accelerate 2030, and this is a hybrid event. So we have people online, and we have you guys who are here with us. So thank you so much for coming to join us today. I'm very excited to be having this event in person because the last time we did Accelerate, that was just after COVID. So it was now like, do we go outside? Do we not? So most of our events, we had them online. And then even for the event that came to close the program, we had very few people attending because we weren't so sure if it was safe to go outside. So this is very, 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 very exciting. So I'd like to welcome everyone, and those who are joining us online, thank you for waiting and being patient with us. So Accelerate 2030 was initiated by UNDP and Impact Hub in Geneva. The goal of the program is to support ventures that are working towards the SDGs and are looking to scale their impact. So since the beginning of the journey with Impact Hub Geneva, we've run to date 5 editions, and this is our 5th one. So this year we have selected 10 amazing ventures that are going to go through a 6-week training and mentorship program. So at the end of the program, they're able to identify what they are going to do to be able to scale their impact. So they also go through a boot camp which is being held next week. They're going to cover topics such as impact measurement, investment readiness, and also they're going to do a product market fit session. Those are just a few, so it's a lot of information. So the bootcamp is not only theoretical, it also provides them with tools to be able to make decisions in businesses and move them forward. So this is just not another training. So we are excited about that. And for us to be able to be here in person, having these in-person events, we'd like to thank our program partner, UND Zimbabwe. And then we'd also like to thank Area 46 and the live streaming company to enable us to do the online version of the event. Okay, so for today, the topics that we're going to be covering is SDGs for business and the Africa Agreement, which is the African sorry, I always forget how to say this, so I will not even try to attempt. Okay, so our first session will be about 45 minutes long, and then we'll take a 15-minute break. So that's also for our online community. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then after that, we go into our second session, which is also 45 minutes. For the online people, you can, if you have any questions throughout the sessions, please do type in wherever you're watching, and then we'll try our best to answer those questions. We won't be able to answer everything, but we'll try to get to those as well. So before I welcome Ethel, UNDP columnist, who's going to take us through the SDGs for business and why it's important to select and measure SDGs, I just want to let you know if you need the bathroom, for those who are new to the space, it's the wall behind me. Okay, so help me welcome Ethel with a round of applause.
All right, good morning, and thanks for turning up. When I came in, it was about 10 to 10. There were only 2 or 3 people. I thought, oh my gosh, we'll be talking to ourselves, Ojiji and I. Anyway, my name is Ethel Bangwayo from UNDP Zimbabwe. I'm the national economist, but I also do a lot of work on the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to welcome you all here today and congratulate you for making it this far. I don't know how many applicants there were, but you are the ones who were within top 10 or 12, whatever it was, which is quite an achievement, quite a feat, so welcome. So I'm going to, as you know, Accelerate 2030 is really about enterprises, growth stage enterprises contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, that's the requirement. Are you contributing to the SDGs? And what is your impact with regard to the SDGs? So SDG impact. So you're going to go through a number of sessions, 2, 3 maybe, that look in depth at your SDG impact, how you measure it, and what you're doing at the moment, where you need to be. But of course, to be able to talk about SDG impact, you need to know what the SDGs are. I'm wondering whether I should even ask, does anybody know about the SDGs at all, anything at all? 2 or 3 people to let us know what you know about the Sustainable Development Goals. And if there are no hands, I'll have no choice but to sort of,
I know the one of the, oh, okay. Okay. The SDGs, is it on? Okay. The SDGs were one of the first, maybe, or one of the first points where every country in the world came to agreement on achieving them.
Okay, okay. 60%, yes, but that is true. But that is true in that the world, the member states, 192 of them came together to and agreed to work together, in solving some of the world's most pressing development challenges. So yes, that is a yes.
Yeah, or maybe to add, I remember before this we had millennial development goals, and so I think this is now working on what the foundation that was set by that. So really, I think to attain sustainable development in our world, in our struggling world, that's what I think.
Yes, well done. So from 2000 to 2015 were the Millennium Development Goals, and the Sustainable Development Goals will be running from 2016 to 2030. So in fact, this year we are at the midway point. So you guys are joining at a very good time, and as well at a time when you're starting out in your businesses. Anybody else, or shall I? Okay, and the blue shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe SDGs actually expresses a blueprint that countries have come together to balance the 3 Ps, which are the planet, to save the planet, to drive prosperity for people, and to drive profit for organization. Thank you.
Okay, I see my job here is going to be very easy. Clearly you guys know quite a bit about the SDGs. So anyway, in terms of the presentation, I'll just take you through a brief background. Then I'll look at, this is why you're here, isn't it? Business and the SDGs. We'll look at the SDGs at work, and when I say at work, I mean within your businesses. What others are saying and doing about the SDGs. So that's other, companies, global brands that you may recognize. And I use those deliberately because if I just say XYZ company from Mount Pleasant, you might think, oh, okay, whatever. But I think it's good to see what brands that you know and recognize are doing about the SDGs. Stakeholders and roles, including your role, and then whether you're really contributing to the SDGs. When you speak to people, people will say, yes, I'm doing this and that, but actually they are not, or they are not contributing in the way that they think they are. Then I'm going to conclude. All right, so in terms of SDGs, we've already been told the Millennium Development Goals ran for, in terms of introduction, ran from the year 2000 to 2015. But then the recognition came that, listen, we are not going to achieve everything that we've set out to achieve by 2015. And so that's when a decision was made to then come up with and implement a successor development agenda, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. And sometimes when you hear them talk about the 2030 agenda, it's talking about the same thing, running from 2060 to 2030. And the idea was to continue with that work that had been unfinished under the MDGs. But when we look at the world today, it's changing so quickly. There are a lot of new things that we need to address, new opportunities that the world can take advantage of. So all of that was brought together under the SDGs. So in terms of the goals themselves, does anybody know one or two that you can give me? Without looking at the slide, maybe let me go back here. Don't look at the slide, let's go back here. One or two that you can. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Okay, let's scratch that. Let's carry on. So I'll fly through this very quickly. And as I'm speaking, the whole time I'm presenting, I want you to be thinking about your business, right? I want you to be thinking about what it is that you're setting out to do. And ultimately, you're going to be asked to demonstrate that impact. If you hope to then make it to Geneva, you really need to have demonstrated that impact and how you are bringing profit and impact together. Okay, so goal number 1 is to do with poverty. How do we reduce poverty? How do we help people earn incomes? How do we set up social protection systems, mainly from government, of course, but even as a business, there's a lot that you can do as well. Goal number 2 is about hunger. How do we eradicate hunger? How do we ensure that our small-scale farmers are getting fair incomes for the work that they do? How do we help them increase productivity even? And that one is important for us when we think about farming and agriculture. It's a key sector for us here in Zimbabwe, but also sometimes we've had to deal with hunger as well when we think about climate change and how that has impacted particularly some of our rural communities. Number 3 is around health, good health and well-being. How do we eradicate those those are diseases that have been around for so long, tuberculosis, AIDS, malaria, that sort of thing. But now more and more we have these new, they're not new, but more and more they're becoming more, what can I say, we're having to deal with them a bit more, the non-communicable diseases, the cancers, diabetes, blood pressure, things like that. But also our health institutions, are they equipped, do they have what they need to be able to do what they do? And are the health staff, are they also equipped, are they trained, are they qualified? And as I speak about this, start to think as well about how you as a business can start to solve some of these problems as well. There are 17 goals, 169 targets, and 232 indicators. Within those, there are a lot of business opportunities. And I need you to be thinking about, especially within the sectors that you're already working. Goal number 4 is education. We hear about literacy. We boast a lot, don't we, Zimbabweans? Oh, we're the most literate in Africa, blah, 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 even in the world. But when we start to look at the quality, is that quality still what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago? These are things we need to be thinking about. The teachers and the staff within the education system, are they qualified? Are they equipped? But even within the schools, are the schools equipped? Are they fit for purpose, if I can put it that way? Are people completion rates? Is the girl child able to access those same opportunities education-wise? And when we think about some of those skills that are becoming more and more relevant in the world, digital skills, do we have them? So all of that is sitting within goal number 4. Sometimes we just look at that and we think, it's sort of top level, but when you drill down, we start to see that there's actually a lot within each of those. Which again, I am going to remind you, keep thinking about what it is that you are doing under each one of those. Goal number 6, water, sanitation, and hygiene. When we think about the cholera outbreak recently, and it's still ongoing, a lot of that is because the wash facilities are not what they should be. People don't have access to water. Sometimes they have access to water, but it's not clean. So how do we ensure that people are able to access sanitation and hygiene facilities? Number 7 is to do with energy, particularly renewable energy. More and more we are moving, the world is becoming cleaner and greener. How do we clean our energy sources? How do we clean the energy that we're using? So renewable energy, we're seeing a lot of solar here in the country. There are opportunities for wind as well. But of course, there are cost savings to be made. I mean, beyond the initial investment in the solar equipment, there are savings to be made there. Number 8 is to do with economic growth, with employment, with financial inclusion, all that sort of thing. Number 9, innovation, industry, and industrialization, infrastructure as well. So when we think about new technologies, when we think about our roads, what do they look like? Are people able to get access to transport? Are people able to move their goods wherever they need to go? So some of you who are dealing in physical goods, are you able to move them to where they need to be? Number 10 is about reducing inequalities. Everybody should be able to have equal opportunities. And when we look at inequality, particularly in developing countries, it's quite high, including in our own country here. How do we ensure, how do we bring people together? How do we pull people up so that people are not having to suffer with things that the rest of society isn't suffering with? And this is inequality across the board. So whether it's to do with economic opportunities, whether it's to do with whatever it is. Number 11 is around sustainable cities. When we look outside, what does it look like? Is our rubbish being collected? What are the aesthetics like? Are buildings just being built wherever? Nobody's paying attention to planning laws. So urban planning as well is in there. And when we think about the informal settlements that are rising up all over, particularly the large cities, those issues are addressed under goal number 11. And then number 12, responsible consumption and production. Those of you who are making things and manufacturing, are you doing that efficiently or are you wasting resources? You need to think about how you are managing resources. Issues of recycling as well. So now your waste, what are you doing with it? Are you just dumping it? Or can it be used? We are hearing more and more about the circular economy. How can we take those things that we used to throw away and use them elsewhere? 13, climate action. And I know a lot of people who are doing work around the environment think they're contributing to goal number 13, but they actually aren't. We can talk about this a bit later because goal number 13 is to do with policies around climate change and climate policy. And I would encourage you to get involved in these conversations. Government always says we want to speak to to businesses. We want to speak to civil society. Anyone and everyone, please come. They want to hear their voices. Don't be scared. Their doors are open. And later on in the program, we will have government coming as well to engage with us. And it's an opportunity for you to have some of these conversations beyond just climate, but in whatever area you're working. Number 14 is life below water. How are we managing our water bodies? So when we think about Lake Chivero, what does it look like at the moment? It's a bit scary, but those sort of issues are covered under goal number 14. And manufacturers in particular, sometimes we find them dumping their wastewater, chemicals even into water bodies. Those are the sort of things we need to be avoiding, and they are covered under goal number 14. Number 15 is life on land. Forests, mountains, that sort of things, land degradation. I think there's one of you who's working on reforestation. I think a lot of what you're doing would be under goal number 15. Number 16 is peace and justice, but also accountable institutions. What is your engagement like with the institutions, the public institutions that you need to deal with? Issues of corruption, issues of crime, they're all in there as well. And number 17, of course, is partnership around the goals. But under number 17 is where we have exciting things like tax and taxation. Are you paying your taxes? What do your books look like? Do you have one set of books for Zimra and another one, the real one that sits under the table? I don't know. Please don't do that. Don't do it. So we heard earlier about the P's. I think you gave me 3 P's. And so these goals are divided, if I can use that word, into 5 P's. Because they are interrelated. So when we think about what I've told you just now, you will see that although they are presented as 17 goals or silos, they are actually very interrelated. They interconnect, they are related to each other. So when we think about people, their dignity and quality of life, goals 1 to 6, and that's those are the people goals. Then we have the planet goals when we start talking about climate change, 14 and 15, underwater, life on land. 11 to 15, those are the planet goals. And then 7 to 10, prosperity. When we think about industry, we think about economic growth, employment, innovation, that sort of thing. Peace, of course, is goal number 16. Our peace issues are sitting there, and partnerships around the goal is number 17. So, like I've said, the goals are interconnected. You can't you look at them in isolation. They are interconnected, they are related. And because of that, when you do your work, you need to take a 360 view. So because it could be that you're doing something that is positive in one goal, but that actually has a negative impact on another goal. So take, for instance, or maybe let's talk about that a bit later. But the point here is that they are very related. So if we think, for instance, about poverty, if you're living in poverty, it's going to be difficult for you to afford healthcare. That's goal number 3. It will be difficult for you to afford education, which is goal number 4. If there's no electricity, if there's no, if there are no energy sources, or if there's not enough energy, goal number 7. It's difficult then to run your businesses under goal number 8 and number 9. It's difficult for you to run health institutions even, goal number 3. So yes, you may be doing good in those goals that you're focused on, but you need to look all around to see where else you're having an impact. Because I don't have that much time, I'm going to skip this. You can go through it in your own time. But here, so Zimbabwe, there are 17 goals, and Zimbabwe is implementing all 17. Under the Sustainable Development Goals, countries were allowed to prioritize those goals that were particularly relevant for them, or the ones they wanted to focus on. And so Zimbabwe said, no, we will implement all 17, but we don't have money to throw. It costs money to implement these goals. We don't have money to throw at all 17. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick those that we think are catalytic, the ones where once we do them, automatically we are contributing to others. So you see where that interrelatedness also then comes in. So for instance, if people are healthy, they're able to work, they can then be productive, goal number 8. If people are educated, they have the skills, the qualifications that they need, again, it's good for our economy, and so on and so on. So the idea is that, yes, they're called priority goals, but then people then ask, oh, so are you saying this other one is not important? Nobody's saying that. We're just saying these are catalytic, these are the enabler goals. Okay, are there any questions? I'll stop for 1 or 2 questions at this point, if there are any. It's either it's very clear or it's not clear at all. And I hope it's very clear. Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm just wondering if you're going to also take us through the targets and indicators as well.
I would love to take you through the targets and indicators, but I fear that most of you, number 1, will fall asleep, and secondly, we will run out of time. But I will share, definitely I will share the target and indicator list. There are a lot. 232 is a lot, so we don't have time to go through them. But one of the things I'm going to share after this is the presentation. with the encouragement to please go through the actual indicators. And I'm going to tell you why just now. So I can see you're moving with me. You're moving even ahead of me, and I like this. I really like it. I like it. Okay, so business and the SDGs. So we'll talk about why you should care. I mean, when you talk to government, they say, yes, we need development, we need our national development priorities to be implemented. As a country, we need to grow and all of that. And that is true. That is very true. But as a business, the reason you're in business is to make money. I mean, really, that's why you are in business. Money is important to you. If there was no money, you would not be doing what you are doing. Whether you're a social enterprise or whether you're purely for profit, if the money wasn't there, you would not even bother. You just would not be viable even. So this is why you should care. Let's start here. I think once I show you this, then your interest is now there, isn't it? Yeah. So this is why you care. New products and new services. So they say a good business is one that is responding to a need or to a pain point that's out in the market, isn't it? So when you look at those 232 indicators, see them, look at them as, or view them as 232 pain points that you as a business can respond to. And once you do that, you'll start to see that not only can you then set up a business around some of them, use this as inspiration, you can then also diversify. You are all already running your businesses, aren't you? That can then give you inspiration in terms of, okay, what else do we need to be doing? What else can we do? So new products for sure, new services, and I'll give you examples of brands that have done that. Risk mitigation. So you want to, there's a lot of risk. I mean, the environment that we are in has, wherever you are, there's a lot of risk. So one of the risks, I don't know whether it's a risk or a threat, I sometimes get those mixed up, but okay, let's call it a risk today, that we have to live with here in Zimbabwe is that of climate change. And I think we are all old enough to have lived through the past sort of few, I think it was 4 years ago when we had those floods. First of all, there was drought, and then there were mid-season floods and all sorts of things. But a lot of businesses actually lost assets. They lost premises, or premises were damaged. You are now having to pay money. You are now having to put up some money that you hadn't budgeted for. So if you are part of the solution in terms of mitigating that risk, it does count when it comes to your pocket, when it comes to your bottom line. And if you're in an area that has a lot of crime, for instance, that's under SDG number 16, you want to be part of the solution. Otherwise, every other day you're having to deal with theft, you're having to replace things that have been stolen. Government incentives, an example is the youth, I don't know what they call it, the youth something, where if you're employing young people, you get a tax rebate from government. So again, that hits you in the pocket, or at least you're smiling, your pocket is smiling. Investors increasingly are considering sustainability and the SDGs. So for example, at the moment within UNDP, there are 2 separate funds where there is money that is specifically looking for a home and a place where the business is contributing to the SDGs. And at the core of the criteria is how are you contributing to the SDGs? What is your SDG criteria? More and more, and they're not small monies either. Globally, we are seeing more and more investors wanting to be responsible in how they invest and wanting to see impact, greater impact for their investment. Cost cutting as well. So say for instance, I gave the example of the youth rebate. Again, that means you're saving money within your business as well. And when you think across the 17 goals, the 232 indicators, there are a lot of places where if things are in place, you are saving money. And of course, as you grow bigger, as your business grows bigger and you need to start doing, let's say you're listed on the stock exchange, more and more when they do the annual reports, they're required to demonstrate sustainability and required also to show SDG impact. Okay, so the second reason why you should care is the impact. And for this particular program, this is very important. So as I say, there will be other sessions where you will go in depth with regard to impact. And you need to demonstrate really what is the impact of your business on the environment that you're operating in. Is it positive? Yes, you want it to be positive. If it's negative, you want to reduce the negative impact. And when we talk about impact, it's about the consequences of you running your business on your environment, on the people around you, on the environment around you. SDG impact measurement must be deliberate. It's not something that just happens by chance. It has to. You really have to think about it. And it should start all the way from your vision. I don't know whether you have yet. You should have a company vision and a mission, starting at that level. When you start thinking about your strategy, when you're strategizing, what's your 2-year strategy, 5-year strategy for your business? Even at that level, you need to mainstream and integrate the SDGs. You need to think about how you strategize for SDG impact and how you take advantage of whatever SDG activity is happening around you. And of course, even better if you can align that to national priorities under the National Development Strategy. There's absolutely no pressure. Don't feel the pressure to demonstrate impact across all 17 goals or to even measure all 17 goals. There are very few companies that do that. Select those SDGs that are key to your work or those that you think are important to the environment that is around you and start there. And then of course you can grow gradually and add to what you're doing. So where do SDGs sit within your business? A lot of businesses, when you ask them, they think that it's all about corporate social responsibility. But it's not just that, it's far more than that. As we said, your strategy, what is your governance structure within your business? What does it look like? Even at that level, the SDGs need to be mainstreamed. Product development, we've spoken about services as well, corporate social responsibility, and of course other places. So the SDGs sit everywhere. Every single part of your business, your procurement, your finances, your hiring, who are you hiring, who are you buying from? You can bring, you're doing teas, isn't it? Where are you getting your raw materials? Do you have small-scale farmers in there? Can you be part of the solution in terms of poverty issues and poverty reduction? These statistics are old, but they are still very big numbers, which are very relevant now. This was about 6 years ago when these were collected. And it was estimated that SDGs globally were worth $12 trillion in terms of market opportunities. And then that 12 trillion would then translate to 380 million jobs globally. At the time, about 9,000 companies had pledged their support to the SDGs, and those 9,000 were worth $4 trillion. Of course more, many, many more have come on board since then. And of course revenue that had already been generated at that point, so 6 years ago, was 233 billion. That was only about a year or two into the SDGs. So you can imagine what it is now. So there are mutual benefits. In the same way that the SDGs need business. Business needs to play their role in implementing SDGs. Businesses also need the SDGs. Like we've said, you can't operate in an environment where there's conflicts, for instance. That's under goal number 16, where there's a lot of poverty. If people are poor, they can't afford your goods. If there's conflicts, you just can't open your doors. You don't know what's going to happen. And so it makes sense for you to be part of the solution and to be engaged. All right, so this is a video which I don't know if we've got time to play it, but I'll just, this will be circulated so then you can watch this in your own time. Just a few examples of business opportunities. I mean, I'll just pick sort of random, but you can do this exercise on your own. When we talk about increasing agricultural productivity, yeah, we see contract farmers out there. There are people who are manufacturing and selling farming inputs and supplies. They are contributing to that. More and more we are seeing these apps, right, that are for smallholder farmers, giving them farming tips. Again, that's contributing to that. Under number 6, yeah, paid wash facilities, manufacture of, so whether it's components to do with wash, those taps, you see them, you buy them in the hardware stores, isn't it? Someone is making them, someone is buying them, that's contributing to goal number 6. But even water purification, the tablets, the filters, all sorts of things, people are making money out of that. But that's directly contributing to SDG number 6. Infrastructure, some of the bigger companies, Bitumen World and others are out there fixing our roads. That's contributing to goal number 9. They are making millions doing that. You know, number 12, food waste, recycling. Don't throw it away. Maybe you can find somewhere where you can sell it. Not just food, but anything really. Recyclable food packaging. What does it look like? We are hearing more and more in the world, they're talking about, oh, we don't want plastic anymore, now we want biodegradable. Somebody's out there making that biodegradable packaging and making money out of it just by responding to the SDGs. Under number 17, there are also issues of internet service providers. They're contributing and they are also making money out of that. Questions at this point? Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the back.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry I was a bit late. I'm not sure if you've answered this, but do you know where like the creative industries fit into the 17 SDGs?
Okay, all right. So creative, so first of all, by virtue of being a business and generating money, you'd be in number 8. Under number 11, I think it is it 11, 10 or 11, there's something about culture. So I don't know whether your creative is linked to culture or it's not. Depending on who you're working with, maybe you're working with poor communities, it could be under goal number 1, it could also be under goal number 8. So it really does depend on the exact nature of your business, but for sure under 8 and under the 1, I think culture as well, number 1 as well. So yeah, it depends on the exact nature of your business, what you are doing in those creative industries. All right, anyone else? No?
You had said earlier that when your business addresses one SDG, it might be hurting another. What do you do to mitigate the fact that you're hurting another SDG?
Okay, so let me give you an example. Econet. Oh, sorry, let me say Econet. We're not mentioning brands, are we? Okay. Mobile service providers. Mobile service providers. You remember those scratch cards? They're still there to top up your airtime. You remember those? It was great because then one of the mobile service providers set up so that was their response actually, and when you speak to them, they say this, it was their response to poverty reduction. So they were thinking, how do we help people earn an income? There's a lot of unemployment here in the country. And they thought, okay, we don't have to sell the airtime ourselves. If we give it to them and allow them to make a commission on that. So then you would, even on the streets, even now, a lot of people are selling those scratch cards, isn't it? That was great. It was helping people earn income, SDG number 8, helping a lot of young people as well, helping to reduce poverty, SDG number 1. But have you seen what the streets look like when people have finished with those cards? They scratch and then they, So there was a lot of litter then. And so when we think about now SDG number 11, sustainable cities, what are our cities looking like? And when we think about recycling as well, under goal number 12, is there a way to recycle those? So more and more they're becoming digital. Now you can buy your airtime in the supermarket. Now you can buy it on the phone using mobile money. Now you can buy it on the internet even. So that's their way of reducing, first of all, material consumption under goal number 12, but also the litter under goal number 11. So that's what they've done. Now they've gone digital in order to reduce that harmful impact of the scratch cards. Yeah, I hope you're answered. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll give you I think 1 or 2 more examples later. Anyone else? All right, let's continue. SDGs at work. Now when you think about your business, so SDGs are a part of our everyday life. They're part of the everyday life of your business. And you can find yourself, you can find something relevant to you within every goal. Are you talking to me? Oh, sorry. Okay, all right. So the first one, we spoke about the T's. One way that you can contribute to SDG number 1 is to integrate poor communities or rural communities even into or MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises, into your supply chain. So instead of one huge company buying from another huge company, maybe you can buy from the micro, small and medium enterprises, smallholder farmers even. Production of fortified foods, for those who are manufacturing foods, you see, added vitamin A, vitamin this, minerals, this and that. That's one way, because especially in places where there's a lot of hunger, we see a lot of, whether it's porridge or whatever it is that's fed to children, a lot of added nutrients in there. So I'm going to go all over the place. It will help you keep awake, hopefully. I won't go in order, 1, 2, 3, then you think I'm predictable. Let's jump around. Use of renewable energy for those of you who are manufacturing or doing whatever it is in your offices, within your premises. A solar panel, I think they're becoming cheaper and cheaper. You just buy at whatever level you can afford and you keep building. That's one way at work that you can contribute to goal number 7. Number 8, just by employing people, but also ensuring that your health and safety is in place to minimize occupational injuries. So the issue of occupational injuries is there in goal number 8. Elimination of discrimination in the workplace. Do people feel that, just because I'm a woman, I face discrimination in this workplace, just because I come from a certain part of the country, just because I'm not Zimbabwean, just because whatever it is, just because, on any grounds. There should be no discrimination within your workplaces. Recycling, do you recycle your paper? What do you do with your paper? What do you do with your used cartridges? What do you do with those things when you're done using consumables, when you're done using them? There are a number of companies that have made a business out of this, actually collecting that waste and upcycling it or selling it on. That's something that you can do easily, recycling. They'll even come and collect. Number 16, illicit financial flows, anti-corruption. We like to look at government, isn't it, and when we think about corruption. But corporate governance is huge. Let me say corporate governance deficits are huge. Even within your own businesses, within the private sector, these are issues that we need to be avoiding. Number 17, we've spoken about this. Please pay your taxes, please. If you're not tax registered, I think through the program, maybe, I don't know, there may be a session on this just to help you do the right thing. Stop dumping waste, just dumping it into into water bodies. I don't think any of you are involved in anything that could potentially do that, but it is happening in the private sector, at work. Staff well-being programs. I know at work we have health days from time to time. Sometimes they do walking, sometimes they do health screening. It's just simple things that you can do in the workplace. Apprenticeships, employing young people. I mean, a lot of you are young anyway, but by employing other young people, you're contributing to goal number 4. Women in management, what does your management structure look like? Are there glass ceilings for women? Number 9, emission of harmful gases. Again, I don't think any of you are involved in anything that uses this kind of machinery, maybe one. But yeah, please be careful about the kind of machinery that you use. More and more, even the manufacturers of machinery are cleaning the methods that they use, and they are cleaning the equipment itself. Waste management, we've spoken about this. Reforestation, well done to the ones who are doing reforestation. But even if you're not involved in that space, we have the National Tree Planting Day. Is it global or national? Tree Planting Day in December. You can participate in that. Plant a few trees in the area where you operate. Contribution to policy, we've spoken about. Water bodies, we've spoken about. So this is internally. This is what you can do internally. But sometimes things happen. Sometimes SDGs happen to you. They happen to your business, and you have no control over them. So let's go through some of these. If poverty is rising, people cannot afford your goods and services, right? So, and at the moment, I think I would say poverty is rising. When we look at what's happening with the rate, we won't go into that discussion. But when we think about what's happening, and we think about people who are maybe earning in Zim dollars, I mean, what does that mean? Poverty levels really are rising. It may not be in our official statistics yet, but it is happening. And that means people less and less are able to afford your goods. Prices that you pay to agricultural suppliers, again, those of you who are involved in that and who are getting their inputs from farmers. Lost work hours. Right now we have cholera, we've had COVID before. There was a lot of lost time in terms of in the workplace. People were sick, they were not able to come to work. So these are things that can happen to your business. You may or you may not have control over this. Sometimes if you are in specialized areas, you may struggle to find the skills that you need. That's SDG number 4. Sexual abuse, it's there under goal number 5. Is there anyone within even your small businesses as you're starting out, is there anyone who can say, this guy, he does this to me, or this woman, even she comes dressed like this and she does this to me? Let's avoid that. Water, sometimes water is not available. You can't do what you need to do. You can't produce, you can't manufacture. And in some places, they'll even shut down the office, because you can imagine people need to use wash facilities during the day, and there's no water, and that affects your time at work. You're having to send people home, and work is not happening and being done. You can cut costs through renewable energy, but when it's not there, it means your machines have to stop. It means you have to go home, and that affects you. Again, injury in the workplace, you may have to compensate. And so, and so on and so on and so on. You can go through these in your own time. Coming back to interconnectedness, right? So we have the opportunities on the left. We've spoken about those. So you were asking, how can you be doing good in one and not in another? So more and more technology is becoming more and more prevalent in the world, isn't it? For efficiency, it's a good thing. You cut costs, you can do more, you're more productive. But as that is happening, technologization, I don't think it's a word, but when that is happening, but even with AI now, what does that mean in a country like Zimbabwe where unemployment is so high? Does that mean that somebody's job is being replaced by a machine, is being replaced by software? And I know they say, no, it's okay because those people can be retrained. But how long does it take to retrain someone and get them to a point where they can now run the technology? It's not a quick exercise, definitely not overnight. What does that mean for unemployment in the country? Mining is one of our key growth sectors. We have a forex shortage in this country, and mining is very important to that. A lot of our forex is coming into the country through mining, but that's goal number 8. But when we think about the land degradation that results from mining activity, under goal number 15, what does that mean, and what do mining companies need to be doing around that? Manufacturing, growth in manufacturing, again, another key sector. What does that mean for our air quality? A lot of our equipment is still not clean. So these can be turned into opportunities. You can flip it around, you can turn it around, whatever is relevant within your context. Questions? No? Okay. So I have a much longer version of this presentation, and at this point we would have taken a break, but this is the shorter version. So we are not going to take a break, and I've only got 45 minutes. I'm not going to give up any of those minutes for a break. I'm sorry. Okay, what are others saying and doing? So these brands, you recognize most, if not all of them. These are all companies that are somehow deliberately and consciously contributing to the SDGs in one way or another. And this is a tiny, 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 tiny tip of the iceberg. There are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of companies, maybe even millions, I don't know, globally, companies who are contributing to the SDGs and doing it deliberately. And so what are some of them saying? So Unilever, we all know Unilever. So the global CEO of Unilever is very, very passionate about the SDGs. And he's saying, it's not possible to have a strong and thriving business in an environment that is where there's poverty, for instance, where there's conflict, where things are just not okay. And we've spoken about this already. We also know Safaricom, the equivalent of that other name that I mentioned before, but in Kenya. So they're talking about shifting the perspective, because a lot of times you think about, what do we need to be doing to contribute to these SDGs? But how can SDGs work for you as a business? How can you take advantage of them as a business? How can you make money out of them as a business? And we've spoken also about some of this. Toyota, we all know Toyota. So they're talking about using the SDGs as a source of innovation. And in fact, I remember a few years ago, their first electric car, what they said was, when we manufactured that car, it was in direct response to the SDGs. They said we sat down and we thought, how can we use the SDGs to inspire innovation? And so they partnered with, I don't remember which company it was, and they then came up with that first electric car. So this is what they're saying, using SDGs as inspiration. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this. Let me try, except it's not. Maybe someone can help me because it sort of disappeared from the screen. But I want to try and play it. So on my, it looks just like that, but there is a video on this screen. So let me show you what it is. So we're trying to play it from the internet. Oh, I'm trying to play it from the internet. So this is an example of how Nike is contributing to the SDGs and mainstreaming sustainability into the manufacturing processes, specifically around goal number 12, which is to do with responsible production, minimizing waste, and recycling. If we can't, we can just skip it, but I'm hoping to play at least part of it.
No, it's not.
No? Okay. So the next few slides are more examples. I'm not going to play all of them, but I'll just put them there. And in the version that will circulate, I'll just give you the links so you can click into them. Because if I put the videos in there, it may be a bit too big. I'll give you the links and you can go onto YouTube and watch and see. So you can see that what I'm saying is actually real. Somebody else is doing it in real life. It's not stuff that just exists in my PowerPoint slides. Okay, so locally, Econet is doing a lot. They are doing a lot around the SDGs. Elevate, you would have heard of the Elevate Youth Club, and through that they are helping young people into employment. They're doing all sorts of things with young people across many different SDGs. Eco Farmer, we spoke about how you can help small-scale farmers to increase productivity and also their profits as well. Through Higher Life Foundation, they are taking young people through school, children who would not otherwise be in school. So under goal number 4, they are contributing to that. And then there's something that they call DPA, through which they distribute renewable energy products, so solar kits and things like that. Oh, so these are the goals that they're contributing to under each one of those. All right, so another one. This is Pfizer. We all know Pfizer. Some of you like them, some of you hate them. You know, post-COVID and the vaccines and that sort of thing. But they are talking about goal number 3 and how for them that is where their focus is, which makes sense. They're making a lot of money actually, manufacturing drugs for all sorts of different. So this is Hilton Hotels. They are doing a lot of different things as well. Another video you can look at in your own time. And then Huawei as well, SDG number 4, they are working on. So I'll send you the links. So in terms of the roles here within the country, so if you do want to engage, the Office of the President and Cabinet, OPC, they provide the oversight. So when it comes to all SDG work in the country, they provide the oversight. So this is on the government side. The Ministry of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, you will meet them at some point before you're done with the program. Within government, they are responsible for coordinating SDGs. They are the lead, they're the focal, the entry point. Zimstat are the ones who provide the data, because you need to monitor it, isn't it? If you don't monitor, you don't know how far you've come. You don't know whether you're doing well or not. And then all the line ministries, all the parts of government are responsible for the implementation according to their different mandates. On the UN side, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office coordinates the UN agencies around the SDGs. In UNDP, we're responsible for integration, so helping to integrate SDGs across different sectors. And then the whole UN family is responsible for the wider implementation. So in terms of your role, obviously it's operating sustainably. Now that you know a little bit more about the SDGs, now that you know that your business can have a negative impact on the SDGs, it's your role now to ensure that you're operating sustainably, mainstreaming the SDGs into your businesses, and being clear about the impacts, being deliberate about planning for impact across your operations, from strategy all the way to the market and beyond. Paying your taxes, please pay taxes. Please pay your taxes, because also, as you pay your taxes, government then has more funding for development and for the SDGs, ensuring of course that you mitigate and negate the negative effects of your business, contributing to policy discussions, and of course spreading the word. So don't just keep it to yourself. There are other businesses that you work with, people you interact with, even your family at home. Do they know about the SDGs? Maybe that can be dinner time conversation today. So are you really contributing to the SDGs? So like we said, there are the 17 goals. Beneath that are 169 targets. Within each target, there are several indicators, so 232 in total, like we've said. If you just stop at the goal level, you will think that you're contributing to SDGs that maybe you are not contributing to, or maybe you're not even contributing to the SDGs at all and you think you are. So for instance, if you're running a catering company, you are not contributing to goal number 2, you are not. You're just not. You're just making nice food for people. Those people will never, even if you are not cooking that day for them, even if we didn't eat this food here, none of us would go hungry. I can assure you, none of us would go hungry. None of us would become malnourished. Catering company, you are not contributing to goal number 2. You may be contributing, in fact, you are contributing to goal number 8 because you have people you employ, you are paying them, you are hopefully contributing to 17 because you're paying your taxes. Pay your taxes, pay your taxes, pay your taxes. Depending what else you do, there are other goals that you will contribute to, but it is not number 2. If you're in waste management, you are not contributing to goal number 13 because 13 is to do with the policies. So unless you're sitting around the table contributing to those policy discussions, feeding data into monitoring, yes. But if you're not doing that, if you're just involved in recycling or whatever, recycling is probably goal number 12. If you're doing other things around reforestation, goal number 15. It's not goal number 13. If you're making financial donations, let's say at Christmas time, you think, oh, we are operating in this community, let's donate to the orphanage or whatever, you are not contributing to goal number 1. Their poverty is not going to go away just because you gave them sugar and mealie meal and whatever on that specific day. So you really need to drill down beyond the goal, look at the targets, look at the indicators to see where exactly. You need to be able to demonstrate how you are making a contribution. So let me give you, I'll just pick 1 or 2 examples from here. So within goal number 12, under target 2.3, it talks about improving or increasing productivity of small-scale farmers and improving their incomes. So if you have an app where you are giving them farming tips and you are helping them, yes, you're contributing there. If you are buying from small-scale farmers, yes, you're contributing there. So there are a number of things that if you look at the indicator level, you will be able to say definitively for sure, yes, I'm contributing here. Under goal number 3, there's an indicator about mortality due to cardiovascular disease. I think one of you has some clinic on wheels or something, taking it out there to the communities. You are contributing there to goal number 3. those of you, if there's someone who's maybe manufacturing or selling mosquito nets, for instance, you would be contributing there in terms of reducing malaria, and so on and so on. So please do go down beyond the goal. Go look at the targets, go look at the indicators, so that you can say for sure. So there's something that they call SDG washing, just like whitewashing, SDG washing, where you are trying to pull the wool over our eyes to say, yes, I'm contributing, but actually you are not. And you may do it innocently, okay, but whether it was innocently or not innocently, it's still SDG washing, so don't be guilty of SDG washing. So just the last few slides, SDGs at home, just to show you that the SDGs, they don't just happen at home, at work, they don't just happen within the UN, within government. Every day you are interacting with the SDGs, every single day. So some of you may have land, if you're lucky enough to have some land. Can you say, do you have secure tenure for that land? Do you have a piece of paper you can take to the bank and say, listen, I want to borrow against this piece of paper for my farming operations? That actually is found in goal number 1. There's an indicator there about tenure of land. Some may be looking after relatives who are elderly, who are ill. We do that they call it unpaid care work under goal number 5, but I think in our environment, we don't really view it as care work or work that necessarily needs to be paid for. It's something that we do as part of who we are. But would you believe that that is in goal number 5? And if you're doing that already, you're contributing to goal number 5. Tap water, we live in Harare. Our tap water is color-coded. One day it's gray, one day it's green, one day it's brown, all sorts of colors. That's SDG number 6. We interact. Every time you frown because it's not coming out, think SDG 6. Next time you open your tap and no water comes out, just whisper SDG 6. Unemployment, some of you have siblings. I've got children there, but I don't think any of you are old enough to have children who are done with university. But maybe it's yourself, maybe it's a relative, somebody you know who's finished school, they've got the qualification, but they just can't get into employment. Goal number 8, they can't find a job. Informal settlements, they are everywhere, all around us in Harare. And at goal number 11. So these are things that we interact with on a daily basis. Some resources there and the links. And then in conclusion, if you don't remember anything else that I've said, please remember that SDGs, ultimately, it's about the bottom line. It's about your finances, it's about your profits. That's where you really care, right? And it's not just CSR, it's beyond that. It's across your whole business. You need to take a 360-degree view, especially when you start to look at impact. You need to look at both positive and negative impact. You need to drill down. Don't stop at the goal level. Drill down so you can see. Involvement in policy discussions is essential, and of course SDGs are a part of our everyday life. Thank you very much. I had a nice, what's it called? Oh, these are my contact details if you would like to get in touch with me. On the next slide, I had a nice video I wanted to show you. I was going to encourage you to stand up and dance, but of course technology is fighting us. It is fighting us. Oh, it might actually play. I don't know because I'm seeing it here. I don't know. This one is playing, but the sound is not playing. Technology is fighting us, I tell you. But anyway, at some point we will. But thank you very much. Thank you. Hope, back to you.
Sustainable. Bread with no butter.
Everyone is enlightened and have things to think about on how to move their businesses forward. Now we are going to have a 15-minute break where we can have some tea, some coffee, and some snacks, and then we'll come back for the next half of the session. Okay, thank you.
munongobatika once in a while, okay? You're not a guest too. Hey. Guest smoochie.
Something that she wants.
But what is it? Hapana, mari chibika ndimne mari.
Hapana mara.
Sasa mbili mwana startup gani?
Startup is
I become a person for my happiness, so still be my own. Everybody get bro, no me say your own bro, passing my own.
nice.
It's Kelpie vibes.
Dangote, see they buy money. I know they sleep on the money. Who happy? Where make I no go buy money? I know they send anybody. Me at the hustle, come check up. Make you hustle, my luck up. I know be your lord, I know be baller. Oh, I'm a to fucker. I go show you my color. She wanna pay me a lot, baller. Me gonna more, yeah, I want baller. They matter plenty, I know me only sata. Oh no, no, no. But do not listen well. When I dey strive and I dey hustle, waiting I dey find, Kaluba I dey find. When I dey move from place to place, waiting I dey find, now the dollar I dey find. And I don't do yes. And many people don't tell me no. Only lati lowo di dandan. Sorry, I'm your be mother, yeah. Is it because I did do I for love? If I get the cash, I could tell you love, I go give you cash, I could be your sponsor. Money, I'm your be mother, yeah. Is it because I did do I for love? If I get the money, you go know. Till I go out to the kingdom come. Because I go there, see the
One. One.
Zvaitika rosa ndezvonizvi iye akazita senge ndanga chimboshandisa kwenda yani ona resolution yechinja ndama yakonza inew desktop zviri kunew desktop ndani saka desktop ushiyoka arisiri saka ndozvandaona kuti ndoshiya sei kana saka ushiya ivi it's not taking this way. Miracle. It's a first
One, two.
But still, I need to put a second. Miracle. Because I'm going to present it. I speak to my dog. I'm going to visa for sure. I think those will be getting more. What's it? No, kuti kuri extend ifungamba kuenda but ndikaendesa mubva takasmooth. Casas visiting a life.
If you could please get back so that we can try finish by 12:15 latest. Yes. Okay, thank you everyone. Welcome back to the second session. To the second session of today's event, where we're going to talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area, which I failed to say off by head earlier today, but I'll practice. The person who's going to take us through this workshop is Ojijo Odiambo, who's the UNDP Economic Advisor. Thank you for taking the time to come share with us. I know a lot of people are asking, like, what is that? What do you... We know about SDGs, but this thing, what is it? So I hope that, you know, at the end of the session, everyone has more clarity and knows and can share about this. Thank you.
I didn't get a round of applause as I was being ushered onto the podium. Whatever you do to Ethel, I expect nothing less than what you do to her. And I demand that I get equal or better treatment. I think there was a conspiracy against the male gender, in the sense that they asked me to speak after a very eloquent speaker. So I think I was meant to be embarrassed because I'm not as eloquent as my fellow speaker. But we'll try and unravel this animal called the AFCTA. But before we get to the AFCTA, AFCFTA, some people call it AFTA, CTA, whatever suits you, I think is fine. If you remove the word goals from Sustainable Development Goals, what do you remain with? How old do you think this concept is? Very old? Who said very old? How old do you think it is? 20, 25, 30, 35. That's 15-year difference. Can you pick one? 30 years. How old do you think? This is a very old concept. So I think, yes, sir. Yeah, because there's been concern about the need to utilize and benefit from the resources that we have, but also taking into account the fact that there are people coming after us. So if you go back to 1987, and I'm not a dinosaur, I was actually an adult of good standing. Actually, that was my, sorry, I almost said my last year in campus, but people will think that I'm a dinosaur. There was a very clear definition of sustainable development, and so these concerns have been with us for a long time. So I think it's upon us as the present generation to actualize the realization of sustainable development. And I think that's why the SDGs are very, very important. And what we are doing is incredibly important, and I want to really congratulate you, because you won't be here if you're not contributing to sustainable development. Forget about the goals. You're talking about sustainable development. You're thinking about today, but also thinking about tomorrow. So for example, pollution, everything else that have been talked about. Now, it's customary to ask, what do we know, or what don't we know? Let's start with what don't we know about the FCTA. Can someone tell me what they don't know about the FCTA? Yes, what don't you know?
How far it's progressed since implementation.
How far it has progressed since implementation?
Yeah.
That you don't know.
That I don't know.
Okay. We won't ask you what you know. Anybody else? What don't you know about the AFCTA? Yes. What is it? You don't know what it is. Okay, one more. What don't we know?
How can we as business benefit?
How can we as businesses? So in this session, we try to answer all those questions. But let me put a caveat that I'm not an expert on the AFCFTA. The experts are the ministers who go to these negotiations, people who work in the secretariat in Accra, people who work on this on a day-to-day basis. So if I don't do justice to it, please bear with me that I'm not an expert. So we are going to learn together about the AFCFTA. Is that fine? Okay. I like going back in time because I'm not a dinosaur, but I like history. I always say that if I was to go back in time, I would be a historian. I would learn history and not economics. I think history is incredibly important. So if you look at the history that our continent, because this is African continental free trade area, so it's for Africa, all right? If you look at the history of this continent, we have always aspired towards economic integration, right from the time when most of our countries achieved independence. My own country got independence in the 1960s, Zimbabwe in the 1980s. There's also that aspiration, and it's embedded in the OAU Charter, and thereafter we have had successive discussions around how to better integrate. And we'll see the role of trade in economic integration and prosperity. Because why did we fight for independence? We wanted to liberate ourselves from the colonial yoke, but we also just wanted to be prosperous more than what we had. So if you look at the OAU Charter, this is embedded. That was why our forefathers went to the bush. It's not just to liberate ourselves, but to be more prosperous. So prosperity is important. And then we'll also look at what is the role of trade in promoting prosperity. I think as you're discussing with in the last session, prosperity is key, the mullah. That's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Yeah? And that's why we are all here. And that's why we are all saying what happened. So if you look at the history, you do that. So 2015, we had Agenda 2023. The agreement was signed in 2018, and it entered into force in 2019. And since 2 years ago, we have been having trading under the AFCTA. And if I may ask, I had hope saying that the idea is to identify you, nurture you, and help you to produce at scale. Is that so? Now, after you produce scale, or for those who are producing, how many of you are now trading under the AFCTA? Or don't we know that we are trading under the FCTA? Can somebody tell me, are you trading under the FCTA? Yeah? You think so? Why do you think so?
We're not sure. I heard that they reducing tariffs and all, but we didn't see the implementation.
So you think so?
Yeah, we think so.
So you think, but what makes you think we are traveling under the FCTA? Because you had some animal called tariff is being reduced, and therefore you think you are trading under the FCTA. Yeah. Good one. Yes, madam. I know you are doing very good things with the sanitary towels, so are you trading under the FCTA?
Not yet, because they're not yet exporting.
You're not yet exporting. But if you're exporting, you'll be exporting under the FCTA?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So what is the AFCTA? I'll just take you very briefly on that. And this is a free trade agreement in a large and growing market. That is important. Large and growing, two keywords. The whole continent, and it is growing, both in terms of population, but also in terms of income. So your market is expanding if you are trying to trade under the FCTA. A market of 1.3 billion people. You can see the GDP. It's a flagship project. There are so many projects of the Africa Union Commission, but it's among the 12, and probably the most important one, the common air services and many other things. It's an agreement consisting of 3 layers. The layer 1 outlines the purpose and objectives, and you can read through this. Layer 2 contains the protocols, and we look at some of the protocols. And layer 3 contains the annexes. As they say usually, the annexes are very important because the annexes contain the details. And they say in English that the devil is in the details. And they say that for us Africans, if you want to hide anything, put it in a book, because we don't like reading. So if you're a trader, if you are going to trade under the FCTA, look at the annexes, because they contain the guidelines, the lists and schedules up to the protocols. Whether it's protocols in trade in goods, trade in services, intellectual property, investment, women and youth, that's where the details are, and that's where the nitty-gritties are. That's what you need to know. So what is it? Why is it important? I just want to reveal that we don't trade a lot with ourselves as a continent, like we do with the rest of the world. Our goods are less diversified. We trade in similar products. We trade in low-value goods. Especially the share of manufactured goods is quite small in our export portfolio. We have limited market access, and we talk about market access in some detail. We have first challenges of poor infrastructure. We have weak institutions, both in terms of implementation, but also in terms of policy and low human capital. So we have a lot of challenges that actually hamper intra-Africa trade. But we know that trade is important, in that trade allows you to earn income, and income helps you to address specific questions. So there's a correlation between, or causality between increased trade and economic growth and the achievement of prosperity, which is why we fought for our independence, and which is what our objective is as individuals, as societies, as nations. We want to live a prosperous life. And prosperity is also one of the 5 Ps that we talked about in the SDGs. So the idea is to promote intra-Africa trade, because promoting intra-Africa trade will lead to all those benefits that I've talked about. Okay, so you can see that. And by some estimates, if we promote intra-Africa trade by those figures, which is about 50% trade in goods and boosting incomes, we can lift some estimated 30 people out of poverty within the continent. And of course, we'll have our own share within 30 million people. What are the objectives? It's very clear. The objective is simple: to boost regional trade, especially trade in value-added products. And I think that's why your innovative ideas, your innovative products become important, because you don't want to trade low-value products which won't earn you a lot of income. Through trade liberalization, which just talks about increasing and gradually reducing tariffs, but also critically non-tariff barriers. There are a lot of barriers that exist to trade, and you probably know, as you begin to think of how you move your goods across the borders, that you oftentimes encounter a lot of barriers, whether they are of tariff nature, and we talk a little bit of tariffs, or non-tariff barriers. Sometimes which are more important than the tariff barriers, because the tariffs are known and very clear. But a lot of times the non-tariff barriers, for example, delays at the borders, are not known, with a certain sense of predictability and certainty. So they are probably more important. And you can look at all those objectives, create a single market. And of course, we know that we're talking about free trade area. Just to go back into the history, you know, there's a progression in how regions integrate. You start with a preferential trade area, then you go to a free trade area, then you go to a customs union, then you go to a common market, then you go to an economic union, then you go to an economic and monetary union, then you go to a political union. So you can see where we are. COMESA is actually a common market, but it started off as a preferential trade area. For those of you who could be quarter of my age, you'll remember that it started off as what we call the PTA, the Preferential Trade Area. But now we have moved progressively by lowering tariffs and integrating more, and we are talking about a common market area. SACU is actually a common monetary union because SACU, which is our neighbors here. SADC is more integrated, and we'll see those principles. The idea is to lay a firm foundation for a continental customs union, thereafter common market and economic union, because this has been the desire of our founding fathers, the desire of our leaders, that we become more integrated, that we trade more with ourselves than we do with the other continents, so that we benefit ourselves more than we benefit other parts of the world. I'll just talk a little bit about certain principles, and I'll pick 2 or 3 which I feel are important for our purposes this morning that we need to know. Let me start with the preservation of the acquis. The acquis is a French word which means that one which has been acquired. So you know that if we talk about the AFCTA having come into force, trading as started 2021, we know that before that we were trading under SADC, under COMESA. So the idea was not to replace what has been achieved in terms of regional integration within the COMESA, SADC, SACU, or ECOWAS, or whatever. The idea was to preserve those. And that's useful because if a region has made progress in terms of tariff reduction, in terms of open market access, we shouldn't take that region back. And we should start from the known to the unknown. We know that within COMESA, we have all these benefits that we can do. So the idea was not to replace those, and therefore, the rules still apply whether we're talking about FCTA, COMESA, SADC, and stuff like that. And that links to the idea of the RECs being the building blocks of the FCTA, and FCTA not replacing the RECs. Because I want to talk about 2 things. The most favored nation treatment versus preferential treatment and the national treatment. These are technical terms, but I think they're useful for you as somebody who is thinking of producing at scale and trading themselves into prosperity and out of poverty. The most favored is this is a World Trade Organization concept, which means whatever treatment in terms of tariffs and procedures and regulations you give to one contracting party, you must extend that to all the other members. So you treat them equally, so that each state is treated as the most favored nation. I hope that has sunk in. However, why then would we talk about trade within Africa being more preferable than within the context of the World Trade Organization, which talks about the whole world? For Africa, we're talking about preferential treatment, where the treatment is more preferential and more than the most favored nation. So it makes sense to trade more with your neighbor Zambia or Morocco, who are part of the AFCTA, than to trade with Mongolia. Because Mongolia, you'll apply the MFN, while for Morocco or Kenya, my own country, you'll apply preferential rates. So the free trade area has preferential trades which are better than the most favored nation treatment. All right? So you can already see why you need to focus on Africa in terms of preferential treatment. Then the national treatment is also very important. Because we want to encourage competition, once a good has entered into the jurisdiction of a particular country on the basis of other preferential treatment or most favored nation treatment, that good must not be discriminated against. You must treat it as if it is produced there, and you don't give preference to nationally produced goods as opposed to those that have come in. That's the national treatment concept. Reciprocity, of course, between states, and of course, we talk about substantial liberalization, that we need to lower tariff, lower barriers, whether they be of tariff nature or non-tariff nature up to that point. Should I say, at any point, feel free to ask if something is not clear, so that I can clarify. So what are the benefits of trading? Yes, sir.
With the treatments.
Yeah,
you were talking about MFN,
yeah,
which stands for
most favored nation treatment.
Most favored nation
treatment
versus
preferential
treatment. Yeah,
yes.
I didn't quite get the difference.
Most favored nation treatment applies to all members of the World Trade Organization, yeah, within the multilateral trading system, which means if you're a member of the WTO and all countries of the world, with the exception of one or two, are members of the World Trade Organization, the treatment you accord goods from each of the member states must be the same as the treatment you accord to a good from any other member state if they are comparable and similar. That's the most favored nation treatment, because the idea is to treat every member state equally. But however, that's the multilateral trading system which talks about the whole world under the WTO framework. Is that fine? Then you can have the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now within a free trade area, you can have preferential treatment which is better than the most favored nation treatment. That means that the treatment you give to a product from Kenya, for example, if you're part of the trade agreement, that free trade agreement, will be better than the treatment that you give a good from Australia. You understand? Because we are part of a free trade area. And so the idea is to then promote trade within that area, yeah, more as you do be opposed to trading with the other members of the WTO. So that's the difference between the MFN and the preferential treatment. I hope that's clear. Any other question? Yes, sir?
Hello. So my question is, how can we as ICTs benefit from the free trade area?
We come into that.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
sure.
I just wanted to be able this concept clear because it's a competitive world, so you must know which side of your bread is buttered. Do you want to trade within the multilateral trading system or the continental free trade area? That's what the point I wanted to make. And the advantage is that you derive from trading within the preferential the continental free trade area as opposed to the multilateral system. All right. So quickly, because I know we'll not. So these are the potential benefits. Preferential market access. These are benefit. You're still entitled to MFN treatment, but you get the preferential access under that. Harmonized laws and goods. Benefit from technical assistance because there's a lot of technical assistance from the UN to the country itself. And non-state parties don't do that. So this is, and of course we'll see what I forgot to mention, that Zimbabwe was one of the first countries to sign and ratify the AFCTA. So what does a country need to do? Because these are agreements between countries, so you as an entrepreneur can only benefit to the extent that your government has signed onto the agreement, right? So what does a country need to do? Sign the FCTA and gazette, sign and ratify the agreement, and gazette the certificate of origin and tariff books so that customs at the border can recognize these goods and certificate of origin. Now we'll come to certificate of origin and the tariff book in a short while. But Zimbabwe, I think the important thing there is Zimbabwe has ratified, and therefore Zimbabwe can trade under the FCTA with all those benefits. I think these are not very important, but I'll because Zimbabwe did sign and ratify by May 2019. So where are we with the FCTA? I think that's one of the questions that was asked. We are at a point where 54 countries have signed the FCTA agreement. Only one has not. And for political correctness, we shall not name that one country, especially given that we are not that one country. Yeah? 7 have certified but not ratified, which means you agree with the principle, but since you have not ratified, you cannot trade under that, but you have ratified. Yeah? And 46 have since ratified. Protocol in goods, dispute settlement. There's bound to be disputes within trading parties. Let's say, I don't want to give this, I don't think it's the best example, but you want to trade with somebody in country X and a dispute arises, there should be a body that settles that particular dispute. Because you are not physically present in that country, there must be a body that enables you to settle that kind of dispute. The phase 1 issues, initially, of course, there's been sequential and progressive discussions and implementation of the FCTA. Initially, the focus was on trading goods, and then there were what we call phase 2 issues, which touched on investment, competition, the intellectual property, digital trade, that is e-commerce, and trade in women and youth. I think a lot of you fall within there. This has since been concluded. So we now have a complete package in terms of trade mechanisms and provisions under the FCTA. What is important is also that the investment one is very important because as a young entrepreneur, you're probably looking to investors to come and invest in your idea. So the investment protocol actually establishes one investment area within the FCTA. So you can easily attract investment as an entrepreneur so that your business can grow and you implement and produce at scale. Yeah. What is also important is that as we speak, and I think somebody asked this question, there's actually trade going on under the FCTA. And the 2 examples that are given is Rwandan coffee, which is going to Ghana, and Kenyan batteries, which are also going to Ghana. And we'll see why Ghana, Kenya, and Rwanda, because there's a provision there that they have been able to use in terms of that. But as people are making money out of the FCTA, I think that's the take-home point. So the next question is, are we ready to make money out of the FCTA? Where are we? This, I think, are the most important things for us as business. By the way, can I get a round of applause for the very colorful... This is the most colorful person I've ever had in my life. Okay. It's one thing to have an agreement, but it's a different thing to facilitate the implementation of that agreement. You can imagine you sitting here and somebody sitting in Marrakesh. Do you know where Marrakesh is? Who knows where Marrakesh is? Yes, Morocco. Very beautiful city, yeah? How do you trade with that person? I think that's the question. How do you do it in real terms, in practical terms? Yeah, you have your goods here. You want to trade with somebody in Marrakesh. Or, like me, you want to get this belt. I got this belt in Marrakesh. You want to get it here and come and sell them here. How practically do you do it? So these are the things that have been done in order to facilitate trade within the continent. The first is publication of the rules of origin manual detailing how to determine the origin status of goods. Because it's not right, and you'll agree with me, that I import a good from country X, bring it into Zimbabwe, and then trade it with country Y on the basis of preferential treatment under the FCTA. And yet you are producing the good here, and I'm competing with you. Maybe I've got it cheaply. You understand? So the rules of origin are very important. So understanding the rules of origin guidelines is very, very critical. What constitutes a good that's produced in Zimbabwe and a good that's not produced in Zimbabwe, although it's originating from Zimbabwe? So the rules of origin are very, very important. So that has been done. And you need to go to the FCTA website in terms of how do you determine the rules of origin? Because if the good does not originate according to the criteria from Zimbabwe, then you cannot trade it as a good coming from Zimbabwe. I hope that is clear. Okay. Then the other one is also the publication of e-tariff book, which contains duties applied by member states. it is available online. So you can know the tariffs, the tax on import or export that is be levied on your product, and is transparently available. That's important because you want to know, if I'm exporting this, importing this, how much duty will I pay? How much tax will I pay? That's also been established. So we, in terms of transparency and transparency, it has been done. The other one is, I talked about some countries already trading under the FCTA, and I think there have been Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, and 2 more countries. There are this initiative called the guided trade, which is a gateway to encourage continued trade resulting in increased opportunities, especially for SMEs, youth initiative. Because it also, trade within the continent under the FCTA was not going to occur by happenstance. Somebody must make it happen. And sometimes you need a proof of concept that this thing can really work. Yeah? Not just saying, okay, we have the agreement, but how do you really make it work? So we had this initiative. They also have a platform for sharing best practices. I talked about coffee coming from Rwanda to Ghana, and the batteries coming from Kenya to Ghana under this. Success stories, lessons. So this is also available online. You can see what's already happening. But the fact of the matter is that people, young entrepreneurs, businessmen and women are trading and making money under the FCTA under preferential treatment as opposed to the most favored nation treatment, which is what we desire. Then there is also what we call the AFCTA Hub. It's a one-stop platform for regulations, for regulators, customs authorities, logistics, and retail operators to collaborate and work together. You can imagine you are trading with somebody in Niamey. Do you know where that is? In Niamey. You have Niger, yes. Yeah? So if the authorities there are not on the same wavelength with the authorities here, then you can see there is always a symmetry in terms of what you can expect. So this also has been done in terms of one-stop platform for all regulators, traders, like yourselves, customs authorities, so that there's no ambiguity. It's all available. Then, and I think this is going to come up. I can already see that's going to come up. But if we open our borders, liberalize trade, we remove tariffs, non-tariff barriers, isn't our market going to be flooded with goods from outside, especially if our productive capacity is low? Is that a logical question to ask? Very logical. So they have established this, but it's not funded properly. They have established this, what we call the adjustment fund, to compensate countries that are adversely affected. Because countries are not the same. I think I didn't talk about varied geometry is one of the principles. I should have talked about that. But countries are not at the same level of development, and therefore the pace of liberalization cannot be the same across all the countries. Yeah? It can't be the same that, let's take our neighbor south down to the south and ourselves. We cannot liberalize at the same pace as our neighbors to the south. There's also that fear. So there's that adjustment fund that has been put in place. The question is it adjustment facility? The question is it funded? Yeah. I think through the Afrexim Bank, they have. It's got both a credit and a grant window, and already for some 1 billion credit is available, and a 10 million grant is committed. I'm not sure whether it has been realized by Accelerate Bank to compensate countries and traders that are adversely affected by the implementation of this. This is important also because I remember under the WTO, there was an agreement that was specific to least developed and net food importing countries. Imagine all countries of the world the advanced economies, and the least developed countries, and they're going to trade on the same terms. So there was a provision for specific and special measures for least developed and net food importing countries. So it's similar to that. How do you compensate countries adversely affected by that? The last is the establishment of a Pan-African payment and settlement system. One thing that would naturally concern you, you're trading here, you're here, based here at the Impact Hub, and you have somebody in, which city do we give now? Which city do we give? Yeah? Which city? Yeah? Yeah, you are trading with somebody where in Africa? Yeah. No, yeah, Nairobi. That's a good city, by the way. That's a very good city, yeah. So thank you for choosing that. How do you make the payments? How do you get your money? Do you trade in your currency? Do you trade in US dollar? If there, they use the Kenya shillings. So this one platform that has been established for settling payments, ideally through the central banks. But I think there's a precondition to it, that we have some level of macroeconomic stability. And I'm sure Zimbabweans understand what I'm talking about. Do I need to explain more? No. But ideally, this is the situation that we don't need to trade in US dollars. You trade with the person in Kenya in Zim dollar, and they trade with you in Kenya shilling. You get they settle you, as Nigerians would say, in Zim dollar, and you settle them in Kenya shilling through the respective central bank. This is the idea of the Pan-African settlement system. I think this is critical, so I want to pause here. I'm not an expert in these things, I'm just telling you what has been done, but these are the things that can facilitate you to trade within the continent, yeah? Beyond the tariffs, which you already know, beyond moving your goods. These are some of the lingering things that have been settled so that you can be able to trade within the continent. Any comment? Not on the macroeconomic one. Okay, you can also do the macroeconomic one.
Ask if it applies also to services. We're talking a lot about goods.
Goods, services, yes.
Okay, so if I'm providing...
Schedule 1 was actually goods and services. Yeah, then Schedule 2 was investment, intellectual property, stuff like that, goods and services, yes.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just asking for an example, like the one you were giving around, was it Kenya, Rwanda, and the third country, like in Ghana, if you know the particulars of that specific deal or transaction that's going on, if it's they're getting so much trade exemptions because of the participating, I don't know, like the particulars of that specific deal as an example.
Yeah, what it means is that these countries, just like Zimbabwe, have published their tariff schedules. So you know, if I want to export Tanganda from here to Ghana, the Ghanaian buyer knows, you know, the tariffs that it will attract. Yeah? So once you know that, then you can trade under, and the tariffs it will attract are preferential. All right? So I don't know that that answers your question. There's already published tariffs. Then there's a customer. You now ship your goods. You know the tariffs that's going to be levied, and you get your settlement in terms of payment. Yeah? And I talked about coffee, and I talked about batteries. It's a bit unfortunate in my view that we haven't been able to trade more under the FCTA than we have been able to do in the past. But I think there's chance. I think we are still in the very nonsense stage, and a lot will be done in terms of... so it's just... and they were part of this guided trade initiative. I think there are 5 countries, I can't remember the other 2 or 3, where initial proof of concept, can it really work, does it work? So I think going forward, there's nothing that stops you with your product or with your service from trading with somebody in Dakar under the FCTA, because Zimbabwe has published their own tariff schedules, same to Senegal, if I'm not wrong. All right? Not clear, eh?
No, that's clear. So I think I'm just adding on to his question as well.
Yes.
I understand how goods can be traded under the AFC FTA. Can you explain further on how services now can be traded?
Who can help me? Okay, there's a lady there. Oh, there's a gentleman. You see, this is why I love this class.
Right. Thank you very much. First and foremost, in Zimbabwe, we are fortunate we've got Zimtrade, so you can go to their offices and they can really custom work with what you are, the services that you're providing, and maybe what the standards that you need to meet, the taxes that you need to pay to be compliant with offering that service, and how to register, what codes you need to have so that you are able to trade with other countries.
As you come in, let's also think of services as what? Banking, insurance, yeah, stuff like that. So can you then help the class?
Okay, thank you. For services, we have got a RIPO, which is an intellectual property registration firm. So if you register your INSM, you can just register your intellectual property, let's say for Kenya, Ghana, Uganda, etc. But I don't know if they have got like lower charges to go in line with the free trade. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So that's intellectual property, but services we're talking about. Yes, I agree with you, and we'll talk about the importance of intellectual property and how it should be safeguarded within the multilateral, within a free trade area regime or multilateral trading system, because we don't want to unfairly benefit from your own intellectual property. And that's why we have the WIPO at the global level and a RIPO at the regional level. And I think we also have national level the intellectual property agencies to safeguard the intellectual properties. But we're talking about here, I think back to your question, is more of banking services. And you have these also cross-border operations, for example. If you look at the banks here, you look at the insurance companies and all other services, they can also be traded because they are all cross-border in terms of investment and in terms of, it's in terms of investment. So they can also be traded within that. And they still are covered under the FCTA. We talked about also one investment market. That's why the protocol of investment is so important, that now as a region, we have basically a one investment market. All right, can we proceed? Yes, you wanted to...
I just want to maybe...
By the way, you're not an entrepreneur, so introduce yourself.
I'm as a customer. You talked about the group of 4 or 5 countries who are already enjoying the free trade in Africa. But I'm just wondering, you talked about Rwanda coffee. At Pick and Pay, I saw coffee from Rwanda, Gorilla Coffee. Mm-hmm. It's $2.04 exactly, a 900-gram jar of coffee. So I was just wondering, how can coffee land? Are we already enjoying that in Zimbabwe or not? It was 900 grams for $2.04 exactly.
I think even without the FCTA, we are all part of COMESA. And that's why I said the RECs are the building blocks and the principle of the acquis. Whatever has been acquired we cannot be lost. So if you see Rwandan products in the Zimbabwe, I think that's good. The question is the price competitive? Is it cheaper? Is it better? Is it better quality or stuff like that? If it is significantly cheaper than coffee from the Eastern Highlands and can be injurious to the domestic, then it becomes a difference. It becomes a question of dumping. It can be called dumping or subsidy. So and then that we get a bit technical. Is it being subsidized there? And that's why we have tariffs. Or are we saying that then our coffee farmers should also be more competitive so that the consumer benefits? I think that's also the idea of international trade. And that's the idea that who is the ultimate beneficiary? It's actually the consumer like you. So you can now go for $2.40 and buy a huge packet of, as opposed to that. It's a benefit to you, isn't it? And that's either happening within the AFCTA or the COMESA framework. All right, let's talk about market access, because this is maybe you want to produce and you want to access those markets. So a little bit, we know that traditionally governments or national authorities use different instruments to regulate trade. They could be economic, they could be physical. Economic measures are mostly tariffs, and there are a lot of non-economic measures, which could be quantitative restrictions. You just say, no, we have enough milli-meal. We don't want to get other milli-meal from Kenya because that will affect our domestic market. So we put a quota. We say that maybe you only get 50 tons of milli-meal from Zambia. That will enable us to meet our domestic demand. Those are quotas. You have technical regulations. You have standards. Then you have the elephant in the room, the SPS, the sanitary and phytosanitary standards. These are very important because you don't want to trade and yet you trade in goods that do not meet the required sanitary and phytosanitary standards, which are important for human and animal health and plant health. So these are very, very important that we meet, and you can understand why governments have a responsibility to ensure that the goods that are traded meet certain sanitary and phytosanitary standards. Yeah. I just reiterate here that the preferential trades we talked about under the FCTA are more favorable compared to the MFN tariffs. Tariff offers and rules of origin are very important. These are key instruments. The rules of origin, very important. You don't import from country X, put it here, repackage, and they export to country Y. And they claim preferential treatment for that good. Yeah, that's very, very important. And then the tariff offers, we need to know, you need to know as a trader, what's the offer from the country where you are trading, what kind of tariff does it attract. Yeah, and we have agreed not to trade under the FCTA. What do they consider, how do countries arrive at their own tariffs? Because tariff is key for your trade. They consider whether the good in question is non-sensitive or sensitive or excluded. Non-sensitive means they are raw materials, intermediate goods, machinery goods that not produced locally, competitively produced by a country and can withstand competition. So these ones you don't feel like if there's competition in that area, your domestic economy would be adversely affected. And you can think about those kind of goods. I think when you have the discussion with the officials from the Ministry of Trade, they'll tell you what Zimbabwe considers to be the non-sensitive goods. Goods which actually are not necessarily going to face competition. Sensitive goods are those that significantly contribute to employment, revenue, forex earnings, and value addition. And therefore, for non-sensitive goods or products, you want to liberalize as soon as possible because the fear and the risk of competition is minimal or non-existent. For the sensitive goods, you want to liberalize over a longer period, as maybe as the economy grows, as you put in place measures to ensure that those benefits of employment, revenue, forex, value addition are not unduly compromised all of a sudden, but maybe over a period of time. Excluded goods are subject to tariff phase down. These are not subject to tariff phase down, yeah, because of other considerations. It could be national security, could be social or health reasons. You just say, no, these are goods that we are going to trade in with our neighbors. So these are the important considerations in arriving at tariffs. More about tariffs, I think I'll skip this. There are many tariffs. We have institutions, I'll just talk about two: anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty. Countervailing duty is where a good originates from a country where the producers are subsidized. So you want to put countervailing duty so that the good then comes in at a price that is competitive and not at a price that will undermine the domestic market and domestic producers. Anti-dumping, if there's an outright case of dumping of goods and services, you can also, goods you can actually put anti-dumping duty so that we don't become a dumping ground for goods produced elsewhere. I'll just focus on those. NTBs are the most important to me. In some work that I did before a lot of you were born, we were doing work on the East and Southern Africa region about cross-border trade. And we found that the problem why a lot of trade takes place informally or goes unrecorded is not because of tariffs. It's because of the non-tariff barriers. A lady is trying to take a bag of maize across the border. It's probably no tariff on that particular thing. But the procedures at the border, the delays, yeah? So that people try to use other routes as opposed to the formal route. So tariffs can be a problem, and we need to address them. But the non-tariff barriers can be a bigger problem. So we are talking about quotas, standards, domestic content, packaging requirements. These are the things that actually people have to grapple with on a day-to-day basis in terms of international trade. And these are the things also that we need to address. And therefore, I think I did talk about, and I think if I didn't talk about it, I don't remember talking about it. The one of the non-tariff. Did I talk about the non-tariff? Yeah, yes, non-tariff online reporting. That's very important. As a trader or a potential trader, there's a platform where you can report in real time the occurrence of non-tariff barriers. Because those are the biggest problems in terms of cross-border trade. And cross-border trade does not mean trade with Zimbabwe, Mozambique. It also means cross-border with Morocco, with Kenya, with Ghana. That's also cross-border. So this is the biggest challenge. And there's been a platform put in place by the FCTA with a view to eliminating borders. So you can, the customs, they just inordinately delaying the process. So you can report that. And the more is reported, the more action is taken, and the more we address the non-tariff barriers. Okay, how are we doing in terms of time, Hope? We're past time. Okay, let's just finish this. So why, if we have all this, why are we not trading under the FCTA? I just picked on 5. The first one is lingering non-tariff barriers. I think that goes without saying. The second one is limited connectivity, difficulty in doing business. The payment system can only work under certain conditions, and I think we discussed that. But most importantly, we're talking about limited production and value addition, because the idea is not to trade in low-value goods, but high-value goods, so that we also, and the last one is limited and inconsistent lack of inconsistent supply, which basically we need to produce, and one of the concerning factors is actually finances. So, and I think if we ask you what's limiting your production now, is actually a lot of you will cite lack of finances. So in the interest of time, I want to stop here with these 5 key areas which are still hampering this, and we may wish to take a minute or two to take any questions or any comments with regards to what hampers trade within the region and what we can do as entrepreneurs in our own space, and what we would expect, I think, to in fact facilitate trade under the FCTA, so that we enjoy this preferential trade and benefit as individuals, as enterprises, and as an economy. Before I hand over, any remarks, questions? Yes, sir?
Thank you. I think maybe it's a question which is a comment. To enable inter-Africa trade, what is this policy doing to address the structural issues that Africa has? I'll give an example. The issue of the currencies, the payment system. If you want to pay for something, money has to go to the US or to France before it comes back to Africa. If you want to move certain goods, they have to go via Europe, via Dubai, to go to the other part of Africa. What is this policy doing, or to address those underlying structural issues that will enable it to go, or otherwise it's going to be another policy that is a talk show and on the ground nothing is happening.
I agree with you. For Kenyan tea, they first go to Singapore, then come back. Yes, there's a hand there.
Thank you very much. I think one of the challenges that we are facing and hampering us to trade is the raw materials. So most of the industries, for example, because I'm biased towards what I always look at, which is sanitary products, like the textile industries, they've collapsed over the years. So you find that you now need Forex to first import the raw materials. Maybe you're looking at 100% cotton. And then you now need, so when you're importing, you're not just importing one row. You now need to import a lot of rows, and that takes so much money. And then you now have maybe the government policies that, that were made to support the cost of sanitary towels. So there's free importation of sanitary towels into the country. But then there's now this flip over where it's not promoting the manufacturing of sanitary towels in the country, the local production, so that we're able to trade. So you now have cheaper imports coming in, which are more affordable for the market. And then for the domestic market, because you're already importing the raw materials, you find where you want to possibly export your products will be very expensive, maybe times 5.
Good question for the authorities, fair comment. But yeah, I mean, really nothing to add to what you have said. I mean, this is a reality that we face, and I think that there's a need to address them. But the structural issues are also very critical. We hope that the payment and settlement system will work, but also the connectivity. I said that the FCT is just one of the 12 projects of the AUC to promote regional integration. There are many more. There's the Grand Hinga Dam, there is the common air transport, there is the rail network connecting the east to the west. My first time to go to West Africa, I won't say the year, but I had to go to France, spend a day, and then come back to West Africa. Any more comment before I close? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ojijo, for that presentation. Yeah, I guess we all left with some questions of how to do this. Not to take any more of your time, I'd like to thank you all for attending today. Next week, we're covering logistics. So we have someone from DHL that's coming in, and they're talking about how logistics and entrepreneurship work together and what they're doing to support entrepreneurs. So if you're looking into transporting things out the country, you're looking into e-commerce and stuff like that, they are going to cover those topics. So that's what next week's session is for. And you're welcome to also bring a colleague, but they just have to register online. So if you check our social media pages on Monday, we have the link up for that. But looking forward to next week and seeing you there. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Everyday party. If I do 99 goody, go remain. Don't know how to show you my love without fucking up. But I can buy you a new baby, straight from me, July. Baby, trabaye, make you know they shall like it. I don't want nobody to keep my matter like. For this life I day, I want to be celebrated. Don't wanna waste my days, I want to spend them on enjoyment. It's been too what time is you? Money won't have you. Everyday party. Do me like I take tramadol. Don't want to feel nothing at all. Okay. You like Ojuju Calabar. Give me moral like I be bouncer. Mon paragon. Take me higher, don't want to land. Until now I don't understand you. Why no matter what I do, it's not enough. If I do 99 goody, go remain. Don't know how to show you my love without fucking up. But I am faded. Just be shaken. Get it label. Baby, trabaye, make you know they shall lie. I know. I don't charge my energy, I don't get time for no enemy. To repay for to me. Nothing with person never see, I'm on nothing with person never see. Forget it, I say bashi. Money soon expected. Take our body, I jump. I take her to the person. Je. I'm in the answer, then yes, sir. Then I'm in the answer, yes, sir. Respect is reciprocal, even though I know say I special. Anybody, when no one to search it. Anybody, when no the carry body. I can't sort it, I can't sort it. To bata fele, I can't sort it. You want job, but you never function because me self